Hello and welcome to the webinar by UX Academy. My name is Naveed. I'm the founder of UX Academy, and I wanted to introduce you to the webinar and introduce our two teachers that are going to give you an overview of product design and the course that we'll be running, which we'll go into more detail shortly. So before we do that, just going to give you a quick rundown of UX Academy. We've been going for nearly 3 years, and we deliver courses in a number of areas around UX and design. As you can see from the slide, we've had a range of different students attend our courses, attending from very large organizations to smaller startups, and some of them I'm sure you will know. And we've been teaching both in-person, in-house, and online courses across different subject matters. If you're wondering why should I join UX Academy or what makes us different, there's a few key important points to mention here. One, we are focusing not just on the theory, but also on the practical side. So you don't just work on any project, you'll work on a real client project over those 6 weeks, where you'll work with the stakeholder from the client's organization. You'll get support and mentorship from us, along with those important teaching sessions. Julia later on will go into a little bit about what mentorship is, and she'll also talk a little bit about one of the example projects that we've done on a previous course. And a couple of other things to mention about why UX Academy. We do small classes, so no more than 15 people. And the courses are over 6 to 8 weeks, depending on which course you're taking. And finally, our teachers, which you'll see in a minute, are very experienced, over 7 years of experience in the field. So here are some of the tools. If you're wondering, how do we deliver this online? We use a combination of different tools: Zoom breakout rooms, collaboration on Slack and Google Drive, Sketch and InVision, and also Miro, which is a Blackboard tool which helps for collaboration both between you and the teachers and between the other students in your team that you'll be assigned to work on your project. Finally, if you're wondering who can get involved, well, this course has really been designed for a range of different background. So you might come from UX, program or project management. You might be involved in the digital side of things. You might be a graphical designer or an enthusiast about building a product, or even looking to build your own startup. And all these different areas and fields and positions are relevant for the course that we're going to be delivering. Some testimonials. I'm not going to go into this. I know you're keen to learn more about product design, but you can visit our website, myuxacademy.com, and you'll see a lot of different testimonials from a range of different students about their experiences, and I highly recommend you go and visit that. Finally, we want to have a special offer for you guys today as you're on our call and on our webinar. If you use the code workshop25, you'll get 25% off the product design course. We'll mention this again at the end, but myuxacademy/enroll, use the code workshop25 and you'll get a quite generous, I would say, 25% discount from the course. Finally, with no further ado, I want to introduce our two teachers to you, Julia and Nick. Julia is a UX design consultant, and Nick is head of product design at RBS. You'll now see him on the screen, and Julia's waving there as well. So with no further ado, I'll hand this over to Nick now, and he can go into what you've been waiting for to get more about what is product design, why is it useful for you, why should you learn about it, and what are we going to end up teaching in the UX Academy course. Over to you, Nick.
Thanks, Naveed. Cool. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm essentially going to touch upon what product design is, and then lead into a couple of sort of hands-on examples to really sort of indicate visually what it is and what you'll be doing on this course. So to begin, I basically wanted to start with a definition. I wanted to explain what product design is not, and as a result, explain what it is. So what this course is not is you won't be designing physical products. So you won't be designing laptops or Fitbits or anything sort of physical. What you will be doing is designing digital products, such as apps or websites. So with that kind of disclaimer out of the way, I want to touch upon exactly what product design is. In a nutshell, product design is problem solving. We take real world problems and try and solve it through a digital medium. The course will essentially help you take an idea and develop it into a fully fledged sort of digital product, an app, a website, or another type of medium. We're not limited to just that. So what does a product designer actually do? There are so many design jobs, ranging from user researchers who primarily talk to customers and try and sort of understand their needs, through to user interface designers who design the interface you actually interact with. So product designer is essentially a role that merges a number of these roles, a number of these sort of specialist roles, and supports a team through everything. Just on the slides here, you can see exactly which roles product design kind of encompasses. They're by no means sort of absolute specialists of these roles, but they touch upon a lot of the different sort of areas, and there's quite a bit of overlap between them. So if they sit in, say, a cross-functional team in a larger organization, they might be expected to sort of assist with some of these areas. And this is what's going to be covered on the course. So how do they actually do it? So product designers traditionally follow a process called the double diamond approach. This uses the IDEO design methodology. They're a world-renowned sort of design studio to essentially integrate divergence and convergence processes to help designers develop and test their ideas before taking them to market. So it's very much an iterative process where you can go through it a number of times before actually creating a sort of go-to-market product at the end. In a nutshell, it's a step-by-step framework, but you don't have to follow it exactly. So the double diamond approach is basically split up into 4 individual steps, and these are kind of grouped steps. You're probably familiar with some of these methods. You might have heard of user flows or visual design. I think visual design is probably the most common one, made very, very sort of obvious by the likes of Dribbble, where people sort of upload very, very visual shots of their design work. But you might not be familiar with some of the more sort of hidden steps, the steps that happen kind of before you get to an end result. And those might be ethnographic studies, design interviews, customer interviews, surveys, that sort of stuff, all the way through to sort of actually measuring the success of a product at the end of it. Obviously, all of this is kind of to become a product site. Next slide. I'll continue. So one of the most important skills for a designer is empathy. It's very, very unlikely you'll actually be designing. To do is you really get into the mindset of the customer or the user that you're designing it for. And this is why empathy is one of the biggest skills for a product designer to have. You really need to sort of put yourself in their shoes to understand and solve their frustrations. Product designers also have to have various knowledge of behavioral psychology principles and design principles. My personal favorite is a psychology principle called the ostrich effect. And this is essentially, it's called the ostrich effect. It's kind of the head in the sand type of sort of visual metaphor. When you think about something bad, when something is bad, you're less likely to engage, and you kind of want to look, you want to sort of shy away from it. An example of this that we can all kind of relate to is if you think sort of a week before payday, when things are a little tighter than usual, you're pretty unengaged with your finances because you're a little bit too nervous, too apprehensive to actually go on, say, a banking app and check to see how much cash you've actually got in there. Just going to wait for the slides to catch up. Cool. So now I wanted to dive into what's called a design audit. So this is actually something that I was working on today, not this exact example, something similar, so same process. And this is essentially where you review an app, you critique it based on certain sort of standpoint. So essentially, depending on the role you mentioned earlier, if you're a UI designer, you might review this app, critique it in a certain way. If you then hand it over to a UX designer, they might review it in a completely different way. If you then hand it over to a user researcher who's very much focused on the customer, they might review it in another completely different way. What a product designer does is actually break down and take all of those standpoints and all of those point of views to audit the app from kind of a full heuristic standpoint. So that might be taking on the UI stance, where they go, okay, do we need a logo here? Is this logo right? Is this the right size? All the way through to the UX side, where you go, okay, are these the options that the user wants to see on this page? So here is just a breakdown of the actual design audit in place, just from the different standpoints. If I could get the next slide, please.
Sorry, guys. I understand that the connection is breaking up a lot. Nick, are you still with us? Nick, are you still with us? Hello. Hello, Nick, are you still with us? Okay, guys, I'm going to remove Nick and add him back to the stream and see if that helps. Remove Nick, and I'm going to add Nick back into the stream. Just bear with us, guys. It's not all lost, okay?
From all different areas of
Nick?
sort of various design roles.
Hello, Nick.
As you can see, the product designers bring a certain individual standpoint to this, but kind of take back to all of the other. So what's covered in the core? Essentially, what's covered in the course is.
Hello, Nick.
We're going to take you from idea validation and development all the way through to sort of research and testing methods. We're going to teach you about design principles and visual design and prototyping, and then get you set up with some metrics and success measurements. We're then going to take you through to the actual sort of developer handover so that you can get this product off the ground and actually sort of deliver it to a developer and get this made. So I want to end on a really positive note, and this is just an indication of all of the various sort of world-renowned companies that have been founded by product designers. This kind of shows that this is the kind of level that will do this course and be able to understand how to take an idea all the way through to a delivery of a project. Cool. I believe back to Adrian.
Nick, I'm going to need you to probably go through the couple of slides again because you've been breaking up a lot. Hello, you still with us, Nick?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go.
Yeah, everything's good by side.
We've had a flood of messages come through. You've been breaking up quite a lot. I don't know if you can mind taking the audience through this part onwards again, if you don't mind, for the benefit of those who have not been able to catch it. A lot of messages have come up saying you've been breaking up. Just let me know when you're good to go. Okay, just bear with us, guys. Please keep coming. Please, in the meantime, whilst Nick is trying to prepare.
Not a problem. I turned off my camera just in case that was affecting the screen.
Okay, so what we're going to do is while Nick is trying to get himself sorted, I will bring him back on to go through some of the slides again, just so that you guys got the full benefit of what was happening. I'm going to hand over to Julia. She's going to talk about UX design. And then, if there is an opportunity to revisit Nick's previous few slides, then we will make that happen. Okay. All right. So we're going to add Julia to the stream. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me, Adrian?
I can hear you fine. That's fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so actually I've seen already a couple of questions coming up about what's the difference between UX design and product design. This is a question that comes up a lot. So we wanted to include a little section to clarify a little bit better what are the primary differences between UX and product design, and what you can expect from the course differently from a classic UX design course. To do that, first of all, I wanted to start with the definition of user experience. So when we talk about UX, no, if you can go back to the previous slide, sorry, yes. So when we talk about UX, we're actually talking about the experience that a specific user derives from interacting with an artifact. It might be an app, a website, service, a product. So this is user experience for us, and it involves emotions, behaviors, context of use, a lot of different things. They go all together within this experience. That being said, UX design is designing based on user needs, context, and principles to achieve a desired experience. So this is the definition of UX design. But what does a UX designer do? Simply put, the UX designer identifies user needs, understand the context of use and the behaviors of the users, all of these through research, so using different research methods. Then a UX designer moves to the next step, which is designing a solution while considering usability, applying principles of interaction design and behavioral principles. And then if you're a UX designer, if you're a good UX designer, you would also test your solution with real users to double check that you actually solved their problems, that you met the user needs, and that the product is easy to use. What it comes out from, like the output that usually creates as a UX designer is usually a high fidelity wireframe, a prototype, interactive prototype. So if you can go to the next slide, Adrian, please. So what's the difference between product design and UX? A UX designer will ask the question, is this easy to use? Is this what the user needs, right? So the UX is really, really user-centered. How is product design different? Product design is a more multidisciplinary. If you can, yeah, thank you. So product design is a multidisciplinary. A product designer will ask himself these questions, but a product designer will also look into business requirements. So you can, yes, so business requirements. He will ask himself the question, is this in line with our business goals? What will be the return of investment on this product, on this solution that we are providing? So it's not just about meeting the user needs, but also the business goals. And this is where metrics are important. A product designer will also look to the visual side of the project. So user interface. Is this in line with our brand identity? Is it appealing for the user? Are we using the right colors? Do we need to build a design system? And finally, but also very, very important, because the product designer is actually overlooking the entire process, the end-to-end, it will also look into the process and try to see if you can make it more efficient. So how can we deliver value more effectively? Value for the user and value for the business. So this is a little bit the difference. Product design does include UX, but also has a business side, a visual side, and a more like a project management side as well. So what can you expect differently in this course from the UX course that we deliver? We will be following the same design process. The double diamond design process that Nick showed you earlier is always that, because I mean, we're always very consistent with the process that we follow, but we will look into more of the business side of the project. We will look into the value proposition. We will look into data. So yes, research, but also SWOT analysis, competitor analysis. Concerning UX, we will try to take it a little bit further, developing personas. And then, of course, we will look into the visual aspects, so UI design and design systems, which are a pretty important part of the product designer role. And they're also very useful. And then finally, we will also teach you how to deliver all of this to the developers to make sure that they can implement the solution in the right way. This is very important because many designers think that their job is done once they hand over to the devs. That's not the case. A good designer job is done when they actually delivered value, so when something is actually online and working. And also the metrics that you have to look at to double check once you've delivered, once you release the solution. What can you check? What KPIs to watch to make sure that you actually made an impact? So this is a little bit the difference from the UX, the beginner UX design course. What will not change, it's that you will still be working on real life projects. And that's in the next slide. So yeah, what we always do, we bring in real clients. We provide you with a brief. You will have the opportunity to get in touch directly with these clients. So it's also really interesting because you also get an idea of how to deal with stakeholders and clients. And this is an example, what you see on the right. This is from a previous course, fledgling. So this is an existing platform. It's an online platform. It's an online platform to access the job market after graduating and boost your practical skills, do networking. And what you see here is an example. We guided the students through the entire design process. And quickly here, you can see there's just some low fidelity wireframes that they sketched. But then at the end, they actually developed the final solution with a prototype, an interactive prototype that they presented to the client. What we will expect, of course, is that you will also look into the visuals. So not just high fidelity wireframes, but also taking a step further and looking also on the visual aspect. How are we going to help you to achieve this? So we actually deliver class every week, of course. But on top of that, we also introduce mentorship, which we found very useful. I mean, we got very positive feedbacks from students as well. So mentorship is meant to be on a weekly basis, but it's absolutely not mandatory. So it's upon the student's request. Is 30 minutes. We usually place it between the two classes, so you had the time to digest the activities and the theory that we went through during class. And yeah, and of course, get our help. So mentorship is mostly about checking on the progress of the project, seeing if there's any blockers, and if you have any follow-up questions on the tools and methodologies that we're using, and finally, also if you have questions related to UX life or career advices. And yeah, that's basically it. We will, of course, we will share the slides afterwards. I think we have also a Q&A part. Adrian, I leave it to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Julia, for just clearing up the differences between beginner UX design and product design. So, ladies and gents, we're now going to segue into the questions and answers section. So, we have seen that there is a few questions that have come in through the chat. So we are going to, get into those. What we will do as a concession, because some of you weren't able to get the full benefit of Nick's talk earlier on product design, we will share the slides with you afterwards, so don't worry about that. Okay, so now I'm going to try and bring Nick and re-invite Nick back in to join Julia for the Q&A section. So again, if you haven't submitted any questions, please do through YouTube, please do through Facebook. And we're now going to try and go through some of your questions. I can see here there's some questions that have been answered already, but we're going to go through them anyway, just in case. So first of all, we have Aju George, and he says, how does product design differ from UX design? And we've heard that from Julia already. Maybe perhaps Nick, did you want to give your perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So product design is almost like the full spectrum. It's taking the business needs all the way through to delivery. UX design is almost sort of a segment within there. So it sort of covers, after the business strategy has been defined, that's when you'd hand it over to a UX designer. Essentially, it's kind of the how, whereas the business strategy and the product designer is covering the what and the why. So it's sort of, why are we going to build this? That's kind of covered by product design. And then the UX designer is kind of how are we going to pull this together? How are we going to deliver this? Product designer does cover both of those. So essentially, in a nutshell, it just covers a lot more of the actual sort of end-to-end process. UX is very much focused on sort of solving the problem, preparing wireframes, testing those wireframes in terms of content, and then handing that over to, in some cases, a UI designer that would kind of polish up, create that high fidelity design, create the animation, work with a copywriter, and then hand it over to a developer. Product designer covers the entire journey.
Awesome, great. So we're going to go to the next question. Thank you for answering that one, Nick. Okay, this one's probably the same question, but maybe it's quite specific, so it might bring a different answer. So we have a question from Maggie, and Maggie says, do you think it's different? Do you think product design is different from UX design, or do you think it depends on the company and often used interchangeably? Okay, I don't know who wants to take this one.
I think that if I can go for the answer, I think it is different from product design, UX, absolutely. I've been a UX designer for a long time now, and I must say I've often, it might depend on the company, yes, because sometimes as UX designer, I've been asked to keep an eye also on the business requirements and not just meet the user needs, but also try to impact the the conversion rate. So I'm also confident looking into metrics and these kind of things. That was a very specific, like it just happened in one specific organization. We are talking e-commerce, so they're really data oriented. Like if you look at the definition, we're really talking about two different roles.
Okay, thank you for clearing that one up for us, Julia. We're gonna move on to the next question. Let's see what we have here. Okay, and we have another question from Shaz. And Shaz says, is the course recognized in the industry? So I think I'm gonna answer that one. So what it is with the product design course and with the UX design course, essentially, did you want to take that, Naveed, or no? Okay, cool. What is it with the product design course and the UX design course is that at the end of the day, employers, what they are looking for is a portfolio. Okay, so we wouldn't say as such that the course is recognized by the industry. We do have a lot of credibility with the testimonials, with the companies that have trained of us.
Provide a certificate. So, there will be a certificate at the end of the course.
Yeah.
But, as Adrian was saying, I think that the real importance is that you get a chance to work on real projects. So it's not just showing that you follow the process and you created a project, but it's also about we deal with the client, we present the project. So there are also these aspects that are really important. And on top of that, of course, you will have an actual project to display on your portfolio.
Okay, Naveed, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I think the important thing here is exactly what Adrian and Julia said. But the reality is, we'd love to be accredited, but there isn't really any industry standard accreditation for product design. So it's all very subjective out there. Everyone has their own accreditation, but there isn't an industry accepted standard accreditation. And that's why what Adrian says and Julia mentioned around portfolio is the most important thing when doing any course. There is no standard, so you just be careful when people do say that. It's probably been certified by themselves or by someone they're connected with. But essentially, when you go to an employer, that's why the employer is really going to care mostly about what you've done and your experience and the project work that you're actually working on.
Awesome. Thank you for clearing that up, Naveed. Okay. Okay, so we're going to move on swiftly. We're going to go into the next question. And next question is, what is IXD? Now, it's quite funny because someone in the chat has also answered the question below that person. But did anybody want to go into interaction design? Julia, do you want to just explain that just for the benefit of the...
Yeah, so actually interaction design, how can I say? Interaction design is part of UX and is also touched by UI. Interaction design is simply thinking and designing the actual interactions on the interface. What we usually do, we go through interaction design principles and how to apply them to design the interface. I don't know, Nick, if you wanna clarify a little bit better.
No, I'll just mirror exactly that. It's majority of the time you think of interaction design as something that maybe the UI designer would sort of work on, where they would create the animations, they would create the sort of animation speeds, they create the actual interactions. When you think about sort of clicking a button, or you think about the sort of the slide or the push animation between different sort of steps in a flow, that's kind of what you'd normally refer to as interaction design. It's worth taking all of these kind of role names with a pinch of salt sometimes, because as we mentioned earlier, it's so subjective depending on the company that you're in. I've worked in companies where they call UI designers interaction designs. I've worked in companies where they call UI designers sort of product designers, when all they do is cover just the sort of visual design. So it is very much sort of company dependent. But from a sort of expert opinion, and I'm sure Julia would agree, this is essentially interaction design is kind of the animation that's the layer that's put on at the end.
Exactly. Then, I mean, if you take user research and interaction design, you have probably a UX designer. If you take a combination of interaction design and visual design, you would have a UI designer. So interaction design is it's pretty vertical, let's say. It's pretty specific.
Okay, well, thank you, Julia and Nick, for clarifying that. We have some more questions that have come through, and they're very similar. I don't know if it's worth answering this one, but I'm going to show it anyway. Okay, so Fernando asks, okay, actually, that's not even the question, so I'm going to ignore that one. Okay, we have a question from Diana. This might suit you, Julia. Isn't the research made by the user researcher? She probably caught that in some part of the video content.
Again, user research is again quite specific. There are user researchers that just do that, and sometimes UX designers might carry out some research, but might also ask the support of user researchers if they need to do a really big research project. It really, again, also it depends on a company. I mean, as a UX designer, you are expected, I would personally say, you are expected to know about user research. You are expected to know which method to use according to your goals, to your research goals. But then, of course, some companies and on some specific projects, you might need to call in a user researcher, which is not necessarily a designer. User researchers might have an ethnographic background, anthropological background, because when you look at user research really in the specific, it's taking a lot of methodology from ethnography. So some of the greatest user researchers are actually have an ethnographic background. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you, Julia. I'm probably going to bring in Naveed for this next question, just to clarify for those who have been aware of UX Academy in the past. So Balax asks, how is this course different from the UX intermediate course? Naveed, did you want to quickly just shed some light on that, just so that everyone's clear on this?
Yeah, so I think with UX, with the intermediate course, it's really designed for people with at least 1 or 2 years experience in the field within UX design, or having worked for a company as a UX designer. Whereas both the product design course and the beginner UX course are designed for people who haven't specifically got that experience within a company. So it's really going to give you a much more broader knowledge, whereas the intermediate course is really developing on a base set of knowledge you've already acquired and applied within a company.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Naveed, for clarifying that. Okay, I'm going to bring Nick back in. We're going to go straight into the next question. So I don't know if this is a funny username, but FGRO, I can't pronounce that, forget it. A little bit of comic relief. I've heard that wireframes are somewhat like developer handovers. What is the difference between the two? I think one of you could probably take this because it's both.
Yeah, I could definitely jump into this.
Okay.
So wireframes are essentially, if you imagine a sort of page and you put all of the content that you want to sort of display on it for an individual page onto that, that's essentially what a wireframe is. It's a guide for the content that you want to have on the page. Essentially, you might during your sort of development process, you might show that to a developer to basically get their opinion. But it's very different to actually handing over designs to a developer. When we talk about sort of handing over designs to a developer, we're talking about assets. So they might need to be provided icons so that they can physically code them in. They might need to be given sort of hex values so that they can have the exact color. We might pass them a Lottie file, which is an animation file. And we typically do this through a piece of software called Zeppelin or Marvel. The wireframes typically wouldn't be handed over directly to the developer, sort of the actual sort of source files, but you might run these by a developer to basically get their opinions to understand the feasibility of developing that flow or developing that content.
Thank you, Nick. That was pretty good. So we'll move on to the next question. Now, just for the benefit of those who weren't able to hear earlier on or just joined, Shalvi asks this question, which has obviously been asked before. Hey everyone, what's the main difference between UX and product design? Could someone just quickly just go over that one more time?
I'm going to pass this one to Julia because I figured I covered it last time. It'd be good to get the other opinion.
Okay, so the difference is it's quite easy actually. I mean, as UX designer, you're mainly an advocate for the user. So what the question that you're going to ask yourself are, is this product easy to use? Does this product answer the user needs? And the UX designer actually identify user needs, does research, design a solution, which will not be the final solution. We're talking wireframes normally here and interactive prototypes, and it will test and do usability tests with the users to double check that solution is working well. The product design is a bit more multidisciplinary. So product design does include UX. So you would be asking your questions yourself, the same questions like, is this useful? Is this usable? But you will also be looking into business requirements. So what's the return of investment? What metrics, what KPIs? I mean, if I put this online, what's the percentage increase of the conversion rate? So you really do look into the business goals as well. You will look into the visuals, so UI, and you will also be looking into the process because you're following actually the project end to end.
Thank you, Julia. Awesome. Next question. This is an interesting one. Which one is more required lately on the market? So Samara asked that question. Interesting one. who wants to take this?
Yeah, happy to take this. At the moment, it's very varied. It really depends on the company size. So I'm trying to sort of pinpoint exactly what the differentiator is between sort of what's expected of certain roles. I feel like it's more and more common if you go to larger companies that they're able to hire an individual researcher, an individual UI designer, an individual UX designer, and possibly a sort of interaction designer as well. If you go to a small startup, they're normally pretty sort of strapped for cash. So they're trying to get as much as they can out of individual roles. And that's normally where you find sort of product designer roles come from. I think they're both completely relevant, but there is more and more, as Julia's mentioned, there's more and more sort of overlap and sort of blurred lines, hence probably why we're getting a lot of these questions as to the differences between some of these roles. So I think it's one of these things that's going to sort of develop into the future, but yeah.
Okay, great. Just wanted to remind everyone that, you know, those that are attending the webinar, you will get the slides, so it will go into the differences once again. Okay. Jess asked a different question. Jess is asking, I'm looking for a career change, and what is the best way to get started in product design without experience? Okay, Nick.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, how did I get experience? Taking up sort of mock projects, there's a lot of resources out there online that essentially give you sort of fake briefs. I would say try and sort of start with a couple of those, because that's going to enable you to have the sort of knowledge of completing a project from end to end, sort of doing a bit of the research, getting it all the way through to something that you could potentially hand over to a developer to code up. I think there's a lot of good resources out there. A simple Google search will uncover some of those. Another possibility, which it might not be as good route, but sort of ask some of your friends and family if they've got an idea for, say, like an app, or if they need a website. Try and get something that hasn't come from you necessarily, so that you can kind of get it critiqued in a certain way and sort of begin to have that relationship between sort of client and designer, because that's kind of what you wouldn't get if you were just to kind of bring up a project to make it up yourself. So those two routes is definitely what I'd recommend.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying that, Nick. And obviously, of course, another obvious option is to join UX Academy and
exactly
experience from the ground running.
Yeah.
Okay. Fernando is asked here, what subjects is included in interaction design? I mean, there is some overlaps in UX design. Julie, did you just want to kind of mention what experience do we get from the beginner's course?
When it comes to interaction design, we mostly look at the principles of interaction design and how to apply them to actually create wireframes and prototypes. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's really straightforward. I mean, we look into the rules that you apply to create interfaces.
Awesome. Thank you, Julia. I'm going to move on quickly. Got quite a number of more questions that come through. Alicia has asked, I'm currently enrolled in a UX UI career track program at Springboard. I have been wanting to learn more about the business side, which my current program isn't providing. Nick, perhaps you can go into the more commercial side of product design.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what this course could give you. Basically, we will touch upon some of the sort of business side of things, the bits that courses don't traditionally teach you, the side that actually you're going to sort of be hit by from various stakeholders if you are in this sort of actual role within a business. We're going to do things like the Lean Canvas board, which is essentially a way for you to sort of value your idea, design idea, against business kind of strategy. So yeah, this course would basically be ideal for you to sort of understand the business side.
Okay. A follow-up question, Nick, from Alicia was quickly, do you think it would be too much workload to do both? So I think she's talking about UX, UI, and product design.
No, I think they would sort of bounce off each other quite nicely. The skills that you learn on this course and the skills that you'd get from the Springboard course, you'd be able to sort of mirror them between the two. So I actually think it would help you be more efficient, because you'd learn sort of simpler ways to do things.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. I just want to say to everyone listening, thank you so much for submitting your questions. We've had a number come in. We're going to go into the next one. And Samara asks, can you also explain more about creating personas? Nick?
Yeah, happy to take this. I've actually just been completing, 5 key personas, narrowing it down to sort of 3 main ones that we're focused for a business side. Essentially, the way that we've done that, well, to start that off, a persona is essentially a representative of your user base. So you might have one persona for, say, someone who is slightly older. You might have another persona for somebody who is in a certain sort of business position. Essentially, the way that we go about creating these personas is by interviewing real customers and segmenting our user base. From that, we're able to do what's called an affinity mapping exercise, where we basically distill all of the kind of nuggets of information that those interviews have sort of come back with. From that, we're able to group them into what's called the design essence. So this is kind of the underlying sort of message that all of these seemingly unrelated comments have come back with. What you then do is you pull all of those comments into essentially a user persona profile, which is probably what you've typically seen online if you type in just sort of user persona, which will be something like a photo. It will say, this is Dan, he's X age, he's on this salary, he lives in this location, his hobbies are this, his hobbies are that. What essentially a persona is, an individual one, is a representation of a whole segment of your user group. It's not one person, it's a collective. And the way that you use those personas is to actually sort of relate your design ideas against them. So sort of use them as almost like a checklist and sort of think, okay, how would Dan want to do this action? They're a super vital part of any sort of UX design or product designer sort of role. And this course will obviously be one of those things that you were taught. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. We've got another one from Eva, and Eva asks, I design and develop. Some companies will call that UX engineer, others designer, developer. I'm considering 2 options, staying a hybrid and further developing that, or moving into design exclusively. So I think you get the gist. She's making a comparison. I don't know who wants to take that.
Yeah, if I can answer that, I mean, coding is a plus for a designer, I would say. It's really helpful because it helps you relate with developers, you know, technical feasibility. So, and actually you can take advantage of your coding skills also in UX design when you do, I don't know, A/B testing, for example. I remember when I was doing A/B testing, I was doing some basic front-end and JavaScript coding. So I think that there is a lot of transferable skills. Of course, it's also a personal choice because, yeah, I mean, it's also related to that person's interest and personality. So I don't know, Nick, if you have a different opinion, but I cannot tell you go for just for design or go just for developing. It's really 2 different ways of working. The biggest difference is really the process that we follow while designing. But I wouldn't be scared to make a jump towards design because you would still be able to carve a role, still using your skills as a developer. It's actually really good, really helpful. I mean, I would expect a good designer, UX or UI designer, to have some basic knowledge of coding, because that helps you relate, negotiate, and understand the developers and make sure that what comes out is valuable.
Awesome. Thank you, Junior. This is just a follow-up question from Ava. So she asked, so based on what she said previously, so this is just a quick reminder of a previous question. So she does design, she develops already. And her follow-up question was, what transferable skills, I think she's meant to say, do you see if I were to move into product design, sorry, will I have to start from scratch? I don't know, Nick, maybe you want to take that one?
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't have to start from scratch. It sounds like you've got a really solid base. I would kind of say specialize in one of them. Specialize in design or development, whichever one you feel is kind of your passion. Otherwise, I feel like you could become too spreadly thin. It's so hard to stay up to date with all of the different sort of new, sort of code bases that coming out, even different languages are coming out all the time, or variations, and at the same time design trends. And to have to, it's hard, and I'm sure Julia agrees, to have to just stay up to date with just the design trends. So imagine having to stay up to date with both of them. I think the fact that you've got that development base will act as a really good sort of like launch pad to dive into a design role full time. I think the skills that you've got are definitely transferable.
Thank you, Nick. Awesome. Very good answer. Next question is from Su Yingwu. Apologize if I mispronounced your name. And he or she says, how do I know whether the project I have done is qualified enough to put on my portfolio and impress the employers? Nick again?
Yeah. I think my sort of standpoint is I've created a design checklist for my design team. And one of the things that's on there is, am I happy with it? Do I feel like this is a good representation of my design skill? If I do, then chances are it's probably up to scratch for it to be out there. But at the same time, sort of send it to other people, send it to people that aren't in the industry, send it to people that are in the industry, and get feedback on it. That's the only way that you're going to kind of gauge if you've missed anything or where you could kind of improve it. If you are sort of throwing it out to a couple of people, send it out to design recruiters as well. They'll be able to give you, and then they're normally really, really good because they see thousands of design portfolios. They'll be able to give you the best feedback. Yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Moving back to Ava again. Oh, this is an interesting one. You may have answered this a little bit, but I'm going to show it just in case. I might enjoy a small amount of coding on the job, UI interactions, design system components, etc. Is this something product designers do realistically? And obviously the answer is yes, isn't it? To an extent.
Yeah, I would say definitely. Just looking into UI, if you build design systems and you want it to be effective, you just don't have a library on your sketch. You create something in React, a storybook in React, so that is all total front end, and it's a direct exchange between the designer and the developer. So yeah, it's absolutely relevant.
Great.
I don't know, Nick, if you want to add something.
I was just going to mention Framer. So Framer kind of is a design prototyping piece of software that runs on a version of JavaScript. That is essentially becoming more and more adopted with product designers and interaction designers. So that encoding would basically throw you into sort of a level of Framer. So that's perfect.
Excellent. Okay. Nick, we have a nice and clean question for you. Kima asks, how do traditional product designers who make physical products need to change to make the transfer over to product design, UI, etc.? It's a nice and clean cut question.
I actually find those type of questions really tough. I think they are, they're two different sort of roles. It's sort of product designer, physical product designer can be so varied. You can be designing something that sits on a desk, or you can essentially, because it's encompassed under the same role, you could be designing a part of a car or an entire car. And so to be able to say like that, are there transferable skills? I think software skills, probably not, but I think mindset, probably yes. I think the fact that you have to kind of solve a problem each time, ask the right questions, go through a sort of set process, that's probably where the overlap is.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, the design process is normally always the same as the user-centered approach. So that's totally transferable.
Okay, brilliant. So just gonna go through a couple more questions and then we can start to wrap up. Got another question from Zoo, and Zoo asked here, what are the employers expecting from an entry-level product designer? How to show that you are qualified, or say how to prepare? Nick, maybe you can take this.
Yeah, so I see loads of junior product designers apply for roles. I think when a company puts out a junior product designer role, they're not expecting you to be able to sort of run with the project completely on your own. Normally, you're paired up with a senior designer for at least a little bit, or a lead designer. Essentially, they know when you apply for those type of roles, for the more junior level roles, that your skills aren't 100% there. You might have one sort of area of expertise. You might be really good at, say, like interaction design or UX design, but you need to sort of grow some of the other areas. So I think if you were going into an interview as a junior, what I would be sort of looking to see is where you've maybe almost like the passion that you've got, sort of really sort of get fired up, sort of going into that to actually prove that, yes, I'm willing to learn. This is how I learn in my spare time. This is how I've sort of developed over, say, a year. And this is the speed at which I could develop into the future.
Good. Awesome. And we're going to take one more question here. We have one question from Chanel. She asks, I've worked for many years developing programs, services, and products for and with populations in the charity sector. Does this experience translate across to UX? So I don't know who wants to take this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's actually, when you have this kind of experiences, I think that you build a lot of empathy and understanding. Yeah. And these are really, really good qualities, soft skill, I would say, that you can transfer into UX to understand the user needs, to understand the problems that you need to solve. So absolutely, yes.
Brilliant. Okay, awesome. Well, I'd just like to thank you to Julia and Nick for taking the Q&A panel. We're now going to wrap up the webinar. So I just want to say to everyone who's attended, thank you very much. If you didn't get your question answered, just feel free to drop us a message. You can drop me a message, adrian@myuxacademy.com, and we can see what we can do. Other than that, we will try and get to your question privately later on. Just want to remind everyone who is listening today that if you are considering this course, who will be taught by the lovely co-host you can see today, you are entitled to a 25% discount off the product design course. Now, it's a generous discount, just as Naveed was mentioning earlier on, but it is a fantastic course. So Julia went through some of the benefits you're going to get through the course. So you're going to get you're going to get a group mentorship session each week, and then you're going to get a live online lesson each week with interactive sessions as well. Okay, and just to remind you guys that this is a weekly evening course, so you only need to set aside one evening of your time to take part in the lessons. And of course, you will get opportunity to work with real life projects and to work in a team where you'll be building those important team building skills. And of course, you're going to come out of the course, you're going to come out from the course with a portfolio to be able to, go into a product designer role, or maybe to launch a startup, or begin your journey as an entrepreneur, and so on and so forth. Okay. Yeah, please take advantage of this offer. I mean, we are now in the lockdown and pandemic. We don't know when this is going to end. There's no better time now to invest in yourself and to, take that jump and, change your career even as well. A lot of people are changing their careers. I'm speaking to friends and family. A lot of them making that change. Yeah, just take the opportunity and, join UX Academy. Again, if you have more questions about the course, we will send out some information. Feel free to also get in touch with me, adrian@myuxacademy.com, and we can see what we can do. Once again, thank you to Julia and to Nick for taking this webinar.
Thank you.
Other than that, we will wish you all a good evening. Stay safe and take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.